Today on Gamer's Couch,
Dice City.
Hello!
The kingdom of Roldovia is in turmoil. Her Royal Highness, Queen Stetesia, has decreed that there will be a new capital after the beautiful city of Daines was sacked by hordes of barbarians and bandits from the south. As leaders of Roldovia's influential noble families, players vie with each other to establish the provincial city as the best home for Roldovia's new capital.
Fairy tale hour done. Welcome to the couch. This is not fairy tale hour, this is the Gamer's Couch, meaning my sweet husband Daniel, who so nicely wrote the introduction of the game, and myself, Sarah, the artist behind Pinselgeschichten. We are talking board games every Sunday.
Dice.
He's really looking forward to obviously talking about this game. Or he's
Dice.
just very goofy. What did you have in your coffee?
Dice.
Dice, dice, baby. We're talking board games. Again, trying to keep my train of thought. We're talking about Dice City today, and at the end of the video we will open the second box of Daniel's advent calendar.
Dice.
So stay tuned for that. We are starting off with rules and gameplay, his part to explain, and then we talk about what we liked or not liked about a game. The game, nicht
Nice.
the.
Nicht?
Oh, that was German.
Nicht?
German lesson of the day? Check. And we finish up the video about the game with funny stories and experiences. And afterwards it's Advent calendar time. So, sweetheart, tell us about Dice City.
Dice.
It's all about dice.
As the intro already gave it away, this game is about dice and city building. You will try to, well, actually, let me get you started with your player board. And yes,
It's a tiny one.
each player has one of those in front of them, so it's actually quite a big game when it comes to having 4 of those on the table in front of you. And as you can already see, and as the title of the game and the intro story says, it's all about dice. So you have these rows here with individual dice on top and colored columns like white, yellow, red, blue, and black, which, surprise, surprise, correspond to these 5 dice. Your turn is set up in, I think, 4 different phases. Let me see if I can get them together correctly. That is just 2 of the 4, so that's
I
why
will
I have
check.
to. That's why I have to remember. So, actually, when you start the game, you already roll the dice, and when you roll them, you will place them according to their number and their color on the spaces here. So let me do this quick. This is a blue 1, red 3, white 3,
And then it is
yellow
black and not
6.
red. You said red and placed the black dice. So you
I
had
said the black 3.
I'm not sure.
Whatever. So my dice are on here, and although it probably is a little bit difficult for you to see, all these little tiles have different effects that may be triggered. So on my turn, and I may think about what I'm going to do on my turn during other players' turn, but we'll get to that. On my turn, I can either pick one of these dice up and get the benefit that is on this little space. So, for example, I'm able to get resources. There are 3 different kinds of resources: wood, stone, and I think that's iron or coal. And once I lift that die up, I get just one of those resources. Now I have to kind of move those away to show you a little bit more about that. As you may vaguely see, there's a green belt around my city in the center here, and these are all resource generation tiles. So theoretically, the black and the white die all only have the potential to generate resources at the moment, while the other 3 dice only generate resources on the outermost fields, or better said, on a 1 and a 6. So, as I said, one of the possible abilities is I take the die away to just get the resource that's on there. Another thing I could do is to take one of the dice away to move another die on the board to an adjacent field as long as it's in the same row. So let's say my yellow die here is on the 3. If I pick away the white die, I could move the yellow die either to the yellow 2 or the yellow 4. Another thing I can do is to discard buildings that are out there, and we'll get to that soonish once I get to the kind of phase where you can spend your resources to buy new buildings or new locations on the game track. And last but not least, there are some tiles that can get deactivated through your turn, but let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. So if it's your turn, you decide what to do with your dice. You pick them up either to use the effect, to move a die around, or to refresh what is available to buy from the game center. So what you have are always 8 cards lying out from this deck of locations that you can purchase, and each location comes with a hair of my wife, obviously, and also
Sorry.
Comes with a couple of basic stats or things on them. Up here you see what is required to actually purchase and build the blacksmith. In this case, the blacksmith requires you to have a stone and 2 irons to pick up this card from the center. They are also worth victory points at the end of the game. That's the little star value down here. And they usually also have a shield with a defense value here, because you can actually attack other players in this game. So the things you gather are either, as I said, resources or so-called, well, I think they're army points. Another area that's on here, so the green are the resources. The reds give you little swords, that's the army resources, and those may be spent to either attack another player or to fight off barbarian, not barbers. So barbarian goblins, evil guys that, surprisingly generate victory points. So the general flow of the game is you, at the end of your turn, actually, you roll the dice, place them on here, think until your next turn what you want to do with them, generate resources in terms of wood, stone, iron, generate army points in form of these red things. Some spaces like this purple one gives you a victory point straight away. Other blue ones are more of a utility type of thing. This one says re-roll this die, so it almost seems like this is useless, but if you think about it, this field kind of increases the chances of the other fields being rolled, which might be beneficial later on. Also, whenever you spend your resources to buy one of these, you put it onto your board and replace the thing that's on here with the new thing that's on here. And you may replace, like cards, like replace a red place with the red blacksmith card, which is also generating army things. Although this one says, as an effect, all your army locations provide an additional sword. So maybe it's not a bad idea to probably put it up here where there's no red at all. And if I have a die on this one and remove it to trigger the action that's on here, all my other red areas suddenly generate an additional sword, as long as I have a die on there that I can remove. So you generate these resources to ultimately either buy these funny little buildings, and they have varying costs. So as I said, this has a stone and 2 iron. There's, for example, the storehouse that's quite cheap, which just costs a wood and a stone, a well, and so on. There are some that are actually more endgame interesting, like this cathedral here, which costs a wood, 2 stones, and 2 irons to build, but is worth actually additional victory points for all locations that have this little quill up here in the corner. So cards may reference each other in this game as well. Now, as you've already seen, there's a whole stack of locations. There's always 8 cards out that you can do. You can, well, replace or refresh 4 of those once per turn by spending one of your actions, so kind of discarding a die to have 4 cards go out and 4 new cards come in. In addition to that, there's a couple of cards that are always available, at least unless they're not anymore, but there's a stack of glary mines up here, and you'll notice there's a slight difference here. So this gives me 2 iron and kind of is an upgrade to the gives me an iron field that is already present on the board. However, these don't give you victory points at the end of the game. So while they're always available, like 2 iron for a mine, and you might have guessed it, 2 stones for a quarry that gives you 2 stones, and the same for a lumber mill with wood. These are there to, well, produce more materials, although there are some, I think there's some greens in here. Are there? Let me quickly search. Actually, no. Huh. That's actually something I never realized. But, so these locations don't have any buildings in there that generate resources. So these, well, available resources are the only way to increase your resource output. After you've used all your die actions, you have usually an amount of resources that you can spend on these locations and an amount of army points that you can spend on, and that's your choice, either on where are the there. There's 3 stacks of bandits that you can fight, and bandits also have this little shield on here. There's a stack with a 5 shield bandit that is worth 4 victory points at the end of the game, a stack with a 4 shield bandit that is worth 3 victory points, and a 3 shield bandit which is worth 2 victory points at the end of the game. Now, the way this works is those military and resource points that you generate don't carry over, so you kind of want to spend your army points to, well, kill as many bandits as possible. Another option to use your army points is to attack another player and steal, for example, their resources. So at the end of your turn, you have to discard all resources that you have more than 1 of. So if you have 3 woods, you're only allowed to keep 1, so you better spend all that during your turn. If you have any leftovers, you may keep 1 for your next turn. However, another player may attack you, and for 2 army points, they are allowed to pick up 1 of your spare resources and maybe steal them until it's your next turn. Another thing you can do, and that's the reason why these buildings also have a little shield on here, you can attack the building or the location of another player. In this case, you need an army strength of 4 or better to attack this blacksmith. What happens then is, first of all, you get 2 victory points that are on here as a kind of one-time bonus. And second, you get to place this pause thing onto the location. So if the player wants to use that location, even though he might have a die on this card, they have to spend a die to get rid of this little pause token to ready it up again and then keep going. So that is kind of a chance for you to hamper or to harass some other players in terms of, well, shooting for their most productive buildings, or to simply generate victory points by attacking those buildings. Another thing you can do to win the game is to, well, produce not only resources to buy locations, but to kind of fill up these trade ships. And similar to the bandits, they come in different sizes. There's a trade ship that's worth 5 points and it requires 2 of each resource. Then there's one that's worth 10 points and subsequently requires 3 of each resource, and the big one 4 of each resource and is worth 20 points at the end of the game. So as you may already have guessed, you can win the game in different ways, or you can generate victory points in different ways. You can either beat up bandits, you can attack another player's locations, you can, well, try to fill up these trade ship contracts, you can beat up bandits, and at the end of the game you will kind of tally up all those victory points you have, and if you have the most, you win. Question is, how do you win the game? Well, once those 3 trade ship things are empty, the bandits are empty, or 2 rows are filled for an individual player. I think actually there's for the trade ships. Let me quickly check this, so I'm not saying it wrong. Or 3. Yeah. Oh, sorry. 2 or more trade ship tiles piles are empty. The location deck runs out, or if players have filled 2. Okay. I was somehow I was under the impression that you have an adjustment for 2 or 3 players or 4 players, but there isn't. So either you empty up this deck, or you get 2 of the trade ship decks down, or the bandits decks down, or have completely filled up 2 rows with custom locations. Then each other player who hasn't had their turn yet gets their turn, so that all players have an equal amount of turns, and you're done, and you start counting scores. And for that, you count your little victory points for your locations, count the victory points you got by attacking other players, or that you gathered through buildings that give you victory points, plus all the bandits, plus all the trade ships, and as I said, if you have the most, you win the game.
And that's the perfect ending for the first section. So let's hop right into the second one, likes and dislikes. Do you want to keep going, or do you want to...
I can.
Sure, go.
So let me start with not only what I like, but what surprised me. When we saw this game at the Spiel in Essen, I was kind of looking at this and this really reminds me of a couple of other games. First and foremost, of Machikoto, which also uses locations and dice, and you roll the number on there, and that kind of triggers that. So this appeared to me as a very streamlined version, since it comes with that board and limits how many things you can have with that. However, by now I'm sure this is actually closer to me to a deck building game than to a die rolling game. Just with the difference that you don't draw the cards from a deck, and you're guaranteed to trigger every building, but you're using the dice. So it's a different, probability approach to how you trigger all those special actions. But that loop of you generate resources and you kind of have to spend them on your turn. You cannot keep things over for the next turn to buy something and gradually build your engine and increase the output of your city is very reminiscent of deck building games. Whereas it also has the little probability thing of dice. Also, another game, since we recently talked about this, this reminds me of, although it is quite different to that, but it feels to me in terms of dice manipulation similar to Favor of the Pharaoh, or Roll for the Galaxy for that matter, because there are buildings in there that allow you to place a die on any building to activate something, or to exhaust a building, to not use copyrighted terms of card games. Actually, exhausting happens with these little pause tokens. To move a die somewhere else. So while it seems random, specific or more at the beginning, as the game progresses, you gain more and more control over what happens on your board, or how you can trigger stuff, and you can actually build up pretty good combos and decide to go either for, I don't want to say the military victory, but you can kind of focus your attention to 1 or 2 areas and try to excel there by generating more swords than all the other players, or generating more resources than all the other players. And that's all stuff I really like. It's I like having options in these games. I like having different approaches to victory, and that there's some randomness in there, but you can say, I want to try this strategy, and even if you roll badly, you probably will be able to work it out. It even has some a little bit of a well, not catch up, but it mitigates a little bit if you roll really badly. So if you, for example, don't know what to do on a turn, or actually if you have one die over and you don't know what to do with it, you can kind of spend it and get one of the...
I forgot to put those out. I'm sorry, I prepped so badly. But I put in a hair.
You're allowed once per turn to spend a die to get one of these little hourglass tokens, and you can spend 2 of those at a later turn to either generate a sword or to get a free resource and do some interesting stuff with that. So while it seems random with the dice, it isn't at all, and that is always a pretty good thing in my book. I like it. Apart from the gameplay itself, I really like the artwork. It's very cutesy. It's I think it's certainly a different art style to Machikoro, but it still has this. Actually, for some reason this reminds me of the video game Settlers, although it really isn't part of that. It gives me this feeling of I'm actually building a town, and it is getting better. It is producing more. I can upgrade individual bits and pieces. I can probably neglect some buildings or some abilities at the beginning, but then upgrade into those. And it's not as complicated as having a tech tree, but you will, or at least for the games we played, I've found that you will have some progression curve of creating more resources, then creating either more military power or going for victory points directly, and then probably towards the end of the game, building buildings that generate victory points at the end of the game, or multiply victory points and doing other things. I really like that kind of interaction. Yeah, and as I said, art style is pretty nice. In fact, one of the things we always complain about is pretty nicely done here. It's a very practical insert. It's actually a little bit bigger than what might be required, so I wouldn't be surprised to see an expansion coming out that just introduces a couple more locations or a couple more effects, which would make total sense to me if they would bring something like that out. Also, I very much liked the manual, because that was, although it looks like a couple of pages, it is very straightforward. It essentially just walks you through a turn and explains very good what you do on your turn. And what I also liked, we had maybe 2 or 3 questions how certain timings happen with certain cards, and those are all in the back under the clarification. So I had no open question that I needed to look up. It's all kind of in here. The game also has a solo variant, but neither of us has played that. But I can certainly see that, yeah, if you go for points, you can play this solo. Although there are probably other games out there that I'd be more interested in playing solo. Although the game box says 45 minutes, I will agree that it's 45 minutes if you're playing with 2.
That both know the game.
Yeah, I think that's a little low ball estimate if you're playing with 3 or 4, because then things take quite some time longer. Although actually something I like about this that for example, I like more with Dice City than, for example, Machikoro, or even pure deck builder like Dominion, is that on your turn, if it's not your turn, you still have something to do. Not much, but since you roll your dice at the end of your turn and then pass on and the next player starts, unless they're interacting with you and fighting, you don't have that much to do, but this game kind of forces you to think ahead and try to figure out what do you want to do with your dice. Do you want to move one? What are the abilities that you can reach by removing a die and moving that one over? Maybe you remove 2 dice to just get to that one space that you want, to figure out what are you able to create. And that keeps you kind of busy and engaged, and you don't get that feeling of, Now it's my turn. Yeah, I roll and I don't do anything this turn and next turn. And I roll again. I'm not doing nothing, and you're just sitting there and getting bored. This did not happen at all to me with
Not to anybody
with this
whom
game.
we played with.
Yeah,
So it's not just you. It didn't actually happen at all on our table.
And while Dominion has something like that too, but it's rather simple because you have your cards in hand and you don't have that many abilities to shift things around. Yes, you could play them in a specific order, but that's it. And here, since you have multiple possible actions to perform per die that you're removing, there's a lot more of things to hash out. Although I wouldn't say that it's getting as complicated to have someone go AP on
no, not
analysis paralysis on this. It is usually quite obvious what you want to do, but sometimes you get to a turn where you think, there's not much I can do this, and then you start looking at, okay, what if I move this and there? And it turns out you usually can do something that at least moves you forward, even if it just means that you upgrade a very simple resource generation thing with one of the kind of always available cards.
Mm-hmm. Anything you didn't like about the game? You can say no, that's totally fine.
No,
I'm just wondering.
There's nothing. I mean, the small cards are a little bit fiddly, but since this is not a card game where you're sitting with cards in hand, I don't mind that too much. But since these are all on the table and you sometimes play games with people who are prone to
don't look at me,
ditch the game.
See, I didn't hear the end of it, including today. It's been going on, I don't know for how many days now. I stopped counting.
So I'm pretty happy with this. I wouldn't say that this is one of the best games of the year for me. So it's not as wow. I'm totally happy or super excited about this. But if someone would say, "Hey, do you want to play this?" I probably would say yes, because this is a really an enjoyable game, family friendly. Well, except beating up bandits, but I guess no, it's family friendly. Don't listen to me. So it's it's a I think fairly well designed, balanced thing. So what are your thoughts?
I'm very much with you on the insert, on the artsy style,
but not the gameplay.
No,
you hate this game. You hate me.
You need. Why would I hate you?
You need to ditch me your hate.
No.
Please continue.
Don't
get interrupted.
Yeah, don't interrupt me. You're still one of my favorite people on this planet. So, how's that? Anyway, I'm very much with you, and don't distract me anymore, please. On the art style, the insert, and the tiny little cards kind of issue. So we're totally agreeing there. I do like the game. Again, agreeing it's not a wow game for me, but it's a very solid game that is balanced out nicely, and it also reminds me more of a deck builder than a classic dice game, because actually, well, the dice do add a bit of randomness, but since you can take away one die to move another die to one spot to the left or right, you're taking away you're dialing down the randomness a tiny bit. There's one thing that I don't want to say I didn't like it, but it was like, okay, it's kind of a pity, which is interaction between players. So yes, you can steal things from other players, or you can attack a building, but that's 2 seconds. When you're me, it doesn't change anything for the other player, because when they have to re-roll their dice, they roll exactly the same number. So it was like, Shoot.
That's
So,
but that's
and-
that's a special
and
thing. Where I
the-
think we haven't used attacking other players' locations that much.
Exactly. Because when you have enough army strength to attack a building with 4 shield, you would rather go for a bandit
The
that
value
gives
is-
you more victory points than attacking another player and just impairing them for 1 round probably. So we actually didn't go for the other players' buildings. We went for the resources and for the re-rolling, and
Interestingly enough, I think in all the games we played, and this might kind of preempt the next segment, but we had very few occasions where someone was going full on resource or building and going for the trade ships.
Yes.
Or,
and I'm having my thoughts on that in the next section, because that is something that I realized too. But it was kind of it's a very solitary game. If you have a heavy migraine and you can't have noise, this is the perfect game if you still want to play, because it's very quiet, very solitary, only very few points of interaction at all. And if you're just maybe not in the talkative mood, put this game on the table. It's totally fine for that, but it's not having interaction at the table. We actually then said, okay, with this one I'm doing that, and this die I'm using to do this, to have at least some conversation at the table, because for whatever reason it was
it's like
a bit too thinky to have a podcast or other conversation at the table. So it hits a spot that is where I said, oh, it's kind of a pity. I don't really dislike it, because it does have a spot on our table when I'm in a certain mood.
But I think the interaction, it's actually here higher than the interaction we have with base Dominion or Roll for the Galaxy. Actually,
yes, but with Dominion, I can have a podcast. With this one, I can't. I'm thinking too much.
So what about Roll for the Galaxy or Favor of the Pharaoh? Favor,
no, not at all. Roll for the Galaxy, we need other cups because it's just too loud to listen to a podcast.
Yeah, but even then, would you have the attention to plan out what you want to do? Because I think
because
they're quite similar in terms of how much attention you have to.
No, for some reason. Roll for the Galaxy is easier for me to have, because, well, since the turns are always in the same order in Roll for the Galaxy, I can distribute my dice and then say, okay, I'm done, so we can reveal and do the action. With Dice City,
you have to decide.
I don't have to do the white dice first. I can start with the blue one if I want to, and that gives me matters. way more space to really have to think, how am I going about my turn? So this would not be a podcast game for me, and it is a very silent game for that matter, because everybody else is thinking about their turns too, and interaction when I steal something, or when I tell another player, please re-roll your die, or if I would ever attack one of their buildings, it's 2 seconds, and not a thing that I would actually call player interaction. It's like, can you get me another coffee, please? It's like that. It's not really like with other games where we do have player interaction.
I think we would have a little bit more interaction if we played this a little bit more.
Maybe.
Simply because then you have a fairly good idea what are the cash cow locations of another player. What is worth attacking?
Yes.
Not just
looking at your board, but at the other player's board more.
Not just looking for the victory points that a location brings, but rather actually trying to impede someone from winning the game. And this might be something that is more prominent, or may become more prominent in a 2-player game. But as we both said, since you keep on looking at your board during the other player's turn, which is nice because it keeps you engaged, but there is the drawback of you're not really looking at what the other players are doing or what they're setting up.
Yeah, you have to be very familiar with
unless you're cleverer than us, which is entirely possible.
Oh,
and congratulations. But there is a possibility there, and I recognize this, although I have to say none of us have utilized that. But I think this game has a lot more interaction than.
Well, so far we didn't get there, and I can only speak to what we had. I can only speak so much to potential things, and I'm gonna get there with the funny stories experiences with the trading.
Let's get there.
Hold on. I do have one more positive thing before I want to rate, and that is the bounce back mechanism. I think.
You mean
you said the catching up kind of thing.
Yeah.
I actually think it's on the verge of going into a bounce back, because you're not having a lost term at all, though you might roll totally badly.
But you may only use that for one die on each turn.
Yeah, but if you don't have enough to either buy a building or do something with your army, and you can only use maybe 3 dice to attack another player for a resource or whatever. It's 2 dice to hourglasses, and the next turn you're way stronger. So I kind of have the bounce back, not catching up feeling.
It is effectively you spend 2 dice to get a result of your choosing, in quotation marks, because once you upgraded your locations, those locations are more useful and more powerful than what you would get by spending 2 of those hourglass tokens. But it is still better than having 2 dice generate something that yields you nothing of any consequence. So.
And I actually like that, because then there is not the chance of having somebody really run away with points and you're just playing along for the rest of the game. And I'm always complaining about that missing in other games. So I was very happy with the way they solved it in this game. And now we can go to rating. What's your rating, my dear? Didn't think about it. Yeah, I'm so unprepared.
This will get 6 dice out of 5 from me. As I said, it is very, very solid, and I think this is actually something you want to bring out to play with kids. Or specifically, if you don't want to go, or if you want to keep the math in head kind of part a little bit lower, because there's no currencies involved in here. I mean, and that's not as prominent in other games either, but that might be something that keeps you from introducing a game like Dominion early on, although I don't think that would be the thing. But here it is very manageable. You always have usually 1 or 3 of a single resource, and obviously being able to read helps. But it is rather simple in what you do per turn. I think that is quite kid-friendly as well for that. It is a little bit generic in terms of the artwork, but then again, that is useful there, so nothing that could offend anyone, I guess.
And nothing that takes away attention. It puts attention on the game and not on the looks of the game.
And I don't want to go so far to say easy to learn, difficult to master, because you can, but there is a strategic component in there that you, if you want to utilize that, and if you want to play a game like that, this works as well for that. And with that broad range, I think it, as you usually tend to say, it totally gets what it sets out to do, and I think it's a pretty cool game.
Yeah. On my personal scale of 1 to awesome, it's an 8.5, and it's lost a few points because of the player interaction.
She's just not understanding. I'm sorry. So it's a 10.
It's not an awesome. It's a very solid game. I like it, but it's not my. Yeah, can we please play this tonight? Can we please play this tonight? Bugging you like every 5 minutes every day. It's not that kind of game. Don't ditch me. So yeah, it's not like that. But we do have a few of funny stories and experiences to share with you. Yes.
Okay.
We played this game 3 times, and none of the players have gone for the trading.
So 4 times for me.
You were at the fair. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you played it at Spiel. So 4 for you, 3 for me. None of us has gone for the trading kind of way to win. Mm-hmm. Though I'm very sure it's not more difficult than winning with Killing Bandit, but it looks way more difficult because you don't get points for the higher resources, like these green cards here. You don't get victory points for those, but if you get a trading ship, the victory points on those are way higher, so you're pretty much getting them the higher numbers in comparison to the bandits, but it looks way more difficult.
Even though there are no green cards in this location deck, there are, for example, these yellow cards that allow you to multiply or exchange resources for other resources. For example, the storehouse says pay 1 of any resource and get 3 of that resource.
Mm-hmm. And ta-da, you got a trading ship. But it's just this psychological kind of thing. It's way easier, or I just gotta have 3 swords and I can slay that dude, and oh god, I need to have 6 resources to get that ship. I'm gonna go for the army slaying.
I have to say, in almost all the games, I decide, okay, now I want to play a little bit more aggressive towards the other players, and every time it somehow ends up with, but I could kill this bench.
Yes,
it's worth so many points. And now I wanna let's be a hero.
Same thing.
Or other players just didn't have locations out that were as lucrative to attack.
Same.
I think at one point I have to play this and just force myself and see how frustrating I can be for all other players by just constantly denying them 1 die.
Can you
yes,
do that?
I can do that with you.
No, not for me. Maybe for the other players only, please. Well,
you. I'm not fighting myself.
No, we will have other players. My mom likes to lose. Well, she played this game with us, which is totally awesome. She's more of a casual gamer, and she was she was really trying hard to catch up and learn and do the strategic thinking that we do when playing these kinds of games. And she was totally awesome. But after that she said, I'm so goddamn exhausted. How do you do that?
And that is exhausting, actually.
Yeah, it
is. Looking at your board, trying to figure out where to move, what to die. And
this is a difficult game. This is like, oh my god. It's so cute, but she did so well with rolling and always going. And there it actually helped for the other 3 players that are, regular gamers. Like, I don't want to say hardcore, but we're I don't know.
We're medium core gamers. Foam core.
Yeah, so we then said, okay, with this die, I'm taking this one to do this one, and then with the resources, I buy this. So we say that out loud in all of our turns, so that she also hears a bit, what are we doing? Why are we doing things? And what do we want to achieve? Just letting her into our thought process, and I think that helps when you bring it to casual gamers.
We started doing that when we first played Dominion, and we did that at the beginning to just make sure that everything we're doing is correct, and the other player actually gets a chance to hear that. By now, in all the games, actually that should be our indicator to find out if this is a deck building game. Once you automatically start with, now I'm removing this to do that, and then I'm doing this to do that, and
It's a deck
paying
builder.
this for that, and then okay, chances are we're talking about a deck building game here. I don't care if these are dice or if these are
I don't care at
wooden
all.
pieces
Yeah.
coming out of the bag or something.
Yeah. But it was really interesting to just play different kinds of strategies. So the first game I was just learning. And I did the re-roll at other players kind of thing. And Tina always rolled the same number on the same time. So that action for me was totally useless. So that was the first round. The second round I tried to have a bit of army and have a bit of resources, and that only went so well. In the third game I tried to go full army, and boy did that work well. So if you commit to one strategy, either it being trading and therefore going for the resources and the ships, or going for army and bandits, you're very likely to end up with a very high victory point score. So that was actually a nice thing to then see everything coming together. I had a really red city, a bit of purple, tiny bit of green, but I was mostly only buying red cards and then slaying bandits left and right. And in one of the next games, I want to try that with the resources for trading. So I'm really interested in if what I assume or what I think about the trading is actually correct. Meaning it takes you maybe a bit longer if the yellow buildings aren't out like right away to get to the victory points. But once you're there, once you have overstep that threshold, you can get the ships with the 10 victory points per card. Also, fairly easy, I think.
Also, you then have enough resources to build as many locations as you want. I didn't say this, but on your turn, so it is always you generate resources by picking up stuff. You generate the army points by again picking up your dice. After that, the trade phase happens, which means you can spend those to either buy a trade ship card or to buy a location. And you can buy as many locations as you want per turn. As soon as you buy a card, a new one immediately comes out. So if you're generating a lot of stuff, even if you cannot afford a trade ship right away, you are at least able to build the locations, and the locations are also worth victory points. So.
No, I just want to see if it... Just from the numbers, it looks easier to go the army route against bandits for your main way to get victory points. It just looks harder, but I assume that it's just as easy to generate pretty much the same amount of victory points than you would do with armies, and I want to try that if I'm right there.
Yeah, and it could actually happen that that also makes it more interesting for other players to do
attack
player
your buildings
versus player attack.
Yeah.
Because then I think those buildings are actually worth a couple of victory points.
Mm-hmm.
And if I know that you're kind of going for the economy win, I can try to target the yellow buildings or the things that I know would kind of hurt.
Exactly. And we just haven't gotten around to doing that.
But I can totally see that. And that's why I say I think there's interaction there.
It's just only... Well, it's not when you're only going for bandits.
Yeah.
Maybe. So, yeah. Other than that... really funny stories other than throwing dice across the room because you're just too clumsy. I think other things didn't happen where we were No. It's a solid game. It's lovely. And I think that's the perfect way to end and move on to the advent calendar. And now he's happy. So it's the second advent. So it's time for another box. And my dear, hold it.
Ding, ding,
hold the duck.
Ding, ding, ding.
Don't hold the duck. Hold the box. I hold the duck. There you go. That's packet number 2.
That is surprisingly heavy for...
There's things in there.
Let's see.
And open it internet friendly, please. Just like last week.
So, in
timely fashion.
Timely fashion, yeah.
No eating. No. No, not in the hair. Tried so hard to have it.
There's a soft thing in here. That's interesting. Let's see what
the thing does.
What the thing is. And what the thing
I don't
does.
know.
And now I will figure out this is
A thing.
a thing, and it's another duck. It is a dice, a duck that is breeding
Dice.
dice. Very cool. Ducks are always a good investment.
Yeah, he's still applying for jobs.
And we have the 2-player version of Andor, which I've seen and refrained from buying because there was a ban on me buying stuff while this is going on. But I'm looking forward to playing this. I hope this is as entertaining as the Seven Wonders Duels is as a 2-player version. And yeah, we get to
I certainly hope so.
We talked about, I think, Legends of Andor as not actually on this, but on your other blog thing, right?
I don't remember.
We might get to Legends of Andor. We still have to play the expansion, the big box expansion, and maybe we'll do a video then talking about that and another one talking about that, I guess.
I hope you like it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And this is, it's for 10 and older, so we should be able to do that. Yep, I'm looking forward to more travels to Andor. I'm looking forward to what will hatch out of these little dice eggs, out of the suspicious looking duck. And I think now...
He's breathing hard.
Now... it's time for you to go someplace else. But if you happen to come across those like and dislike buttons,
there's no dislike button.
Pick one, subscribe,
share,
and watch me dying from coughing.
Share. You always forget the share. Sharing is caring, just not with herpes.
But is she? Oh, I guess she's still making music, right?
Who?
Cher.
Oh, I don't know.
The woman is getting old. She's not on my mind constantly, so that's why I forget Cher.
Whatever. Also, if you have opinions or questions, please leave them in the comment section below.
Other than ours. That's a good one.
Please leave them in the comment section below. Oh gosh. I'm sorry, I'm on the verge of a disaster.
The academic owl is present.
Stop.
Doctor Who.
Oh no, I don't want to go into laughing uncontrollably.
Let me cover her face with the intelligent duck.
Thank you.
Duck face.
Ooh. So, if you happen to have opinions or questions, stop laughing. Leave them in the comment section below. We would very much appreciate that. And we will see you next week with a new Gamers Couch and the opening of Advent Calendar box number 3.
Calendar Palooza. Part 3.
Yeah, whatever. I will see you tomorrow on the art journal, so stay tuned for some crazy artwork and have fun. Goodbye, take care.
Crazy artwork, you said?
Yeah, artwork, not you, not me, crazy. Enjoy. Bye.
Goodbye. Sorry. No, it's the right goodbye.
I will say the proper goodbye to you too, soon-ish, if you keep on doing that.